Hi, I'm Renée Walker, a mindset mentor, speaker, and lover of all things spiritual. I believe that at our core, we are all spiritually wired for love, peace, success, and abundance. Here on the podcast, we're diving into mindset, wellness, and business, but always through a spiritual lens. Let's just say we're going deep, but we're keeping it light. So let's elevate your life from the inside out, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Spiritually Wired. Welcome to the Spiritually Wired podcast. You are in for a treat today because with me is Carly Ottaway. And Carly is the CEO of the creative agency Web of Words. I've had the privilege of working with her on a few occasions, actually. But the reason that I'm extra excited about this podcast today is that today is the day that Carly's book, Coming Home, is officially out in the world.
Yes.
I'm getting emotional just saying it right now. Coming Home, the path to your favorite self and permission to do it your way. So before we go any further, I just want to take a moment to celebrate you because I can only imagine how big this moment is. And I'm sure that it has been quite the process getting here. And that's really where I would love for us to start is how are you feeling in this moment and what does it mean to be sitting here knowing that your book is now out there and people are able to read your story and get to know you in such a intimate way.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is truly a dream come true. And I feel like we talked about doing this like very early stages. So the fact it's just such a full circle moment to be sitting here now, knowing that this is going out on launch day. Today is launch day. Today is the day that the book is officially available. It's pub day, which like feels so wild to say. So getting to embody that right now while we're recording is so fun. But yeah, I'm so happy to be here. And I promise too, the book won't have the not for resale stripe on it as well. So that's just, we're still just in those final stages right now as we're recording. So that's the final proof that I'm so excited to bring today so that you could hold it. You've been such a huge part of this journey with me, Renée, from the beginning, going along side by side. So I'm just so excited and grateful to be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being here, but also thank you for showing us all what's possible. You know, as you said, you and I have been behind the scenes working on our books together, and for you to have it out there, like it's one thing to talk about doing a book, writing a book, and there's a safety in being in the process of writing your book. And then it's a whole different energy when you are now, publishing it. So you're choosing the book cover and, that's a whole other part of it. And then now to actually know that people can read it. So what has been this whole process like for you?
There have been so many different growth seasons throughout this whole journey. I feel like in the writing, I felt so aligned in the writing process, like just to truly be in my most creative, artistic zone. Especially when I've been working in marketing, like my business, I've been in business for 10 years and I have really been focusing on sharing other people's stories. So this was a whole practice in leaning back into my own story again. And it was such a therapeutic experience for me, such a healing experience. And with that comes so much discomfort as well in that process and so much growth and expansion and learning. But yeah, I feel like every part of the process brought its own lessons and experiences. So the writing was so much, I really had to write the book for myself first. Yeah. I realized that I couldn't think about who was reading it at the time. Especially, I couldn't think about people in my own life reading it and what they would think about it. I really had to let myself get out what needed to get on the page. And it felt like such a subconscious experience, but that's such a stream of consciousness in the writing process. And then comes the editing process. And the editing is really where I very clearly tune into the reader and still stay very authentic to myself and how I'm telling the story. But I get very tapped into my why again around the importance of sharing this story. So the first time I was kind of writing it like for my younger self. My daughter was a huge inspiration. She's 6 right now. So looking at her and getting to kind of get that full experience of like thinking of my younger self, and I'm making this lifelong dream come true because I've literally had this dream as long as I can remember to write a book and put it out into the world. And then the editing is when I'm thinking of the other young mom entrepreneurs, especially that, I want to share these lessons with, that I wish I had a book like this when I was in that season of life. And it's not just for those women either. It's really meant for a wide range of people in different.
We have a visitor.
Yes, little mascot. It's really for any woman who is tired of hiding and playing small and feeling like she's constantly told what she should do in order to feel successful, and giving her that permission to truly carve her own path and step into her authenticity, or what I call her favorite self in the book. And then, getting ready to publish was the hardest part of the journey. I feel like I had to almost go through a lot of the tests that I write about in the book in a whole other way. It was kind of like the universe was sending me this message like, okay, are we really doing this? Are you really ready to put yourself out there in this way? So we can get into kind of like those core wounds and stuff that were showing up in different stages as well. But what a roller coaster.
And, you mentioned that you've always wanted to write a book. And that is the part that, first of all, the book covers so many different aspects, motherhood and relationships. I feel like part of it is a love letter to your husband. Like it's so beautiful the way that you speak about your partnership. And then business and spirituality. There's some abundance and signs, and there's really a little bit of everything in the book. But what I found to be unique in a way is that you are a writer. People want to write books. I know a lot of people who want to write books, but the writing piece is you have to write the book, right? It's not because there's a passion about writing. And I really felt that passion for writing that you have for writing and the way in which you delivered it, which is so, as the reader, it's such a beautiful experience.
Thank you so much. I love hearing that feedback from you. And I have wanted to write since I was a little girl. I was the girl playing Harriet the Spy. I love journaling. When my parents went through a divorce, I wrote my way through it. I was always writing poetry about it. My mom still has the poem that I wrote at the time that to help me process those emotions. So it's always felt like my favorite way to communicate. Words of affirmation are my love language. I've been telling my husband, I'm so glad you said that this is like a love letter to him. And he's like, this book is about you. I'm like, you need to read it again. But, I think just being able to express myself in this way was so freeing because, in the marketing world, especially where it's like so focused on short form content constantly, I feel like I was suffocated in my expression in a lot of ways. And so being able to write this book and like pull from old journal entries and like go through that whole process and really just let myself tap into that felt so amazing. And that's my dream. Like if I could just, write books for a living, channel that Elizabeth Gilbert energy, I'm so here for it. But yeah.
Yeah, and to do it for yourself. So, I mentioned that I've been able to work with you, and you've helped. Well, you created your agency, did my website. We've redone it a couple of times as I've evolved. But part of what really drew me to you and your work was you and your team's ability to really pull out the stories, because it was very difficult for me to be able to put into words the work that I do. So I knew that this is one of your superpowers, that you're really good at that. But this would feel very different, because now it's using that for yourself.
Yes. And it really let me, as we all need to do, sit in the client's seat again and see it from their perspective, when it comes to writing my own story. And I think I'm so comfortable being the mirror for my clients and being able to reflect that favorite self back to them and really show them, how powerful their story is and help them embody that and step into that, whether it's through their copy or through their social media. But having to take that and practice what I preach in a whole different way was such a cool learning experience. Yeah. And I highly recommend it to everyone to go through that, even if it sits in a desk drawer, whatever the kind of purpose is. But there's something about letting yourself really look at your story in that light that's so empowering.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned the word mirror, and I know a big part of your book is this mirror effect. So can you tell us more about how you came to that idea of the mirror effect?
Yeah. Yeah. So in the marketing world, there's this term called mirroring, and it's more of a strategic approach in terms of writing in the language that your audience uses, so that you truly are a reflecting kind of their selves back at them, right? So in marketing, we're always talking about how you're selling the story, you're selling the transformation. So it's so important that you're speaking in the language of your audience and not getting too caught up in your language as the expert that's been doing this for 10, 20 years. That's what really resonates with them. But it's also just a very authentic way of doing it. And it's very intentional too. And I just started finding so many experiences and motherhood especially, where I was feeling like these experiences were mirrors for me and reflecting back areas where I felt like I needed to heal, where I needed to grow. And then other areas where reflecting back also my favorite self in different situations, in terms of the people that I surround myself with, and just being really intentional about the people that you're with, because they are mirrors of your energy too. And I really believe that you attract what you project into the world. So I came up with this concept that I use in the book called the mirror effect. And I share just about how it shows up in your leadership, in your parenting. Our kids are the ultimate tiny mirrors. And that was such a lesson for me, seeing when I'm dysregulated and how they absorb that energy. And it's such a reminder of when my kids are struggling and I have to really pause and be like, okay, actually, this is coming from me and my energy. How can I shift myself first? Which is why I think it's so important, that we talk about how the mom, especially filling her cup first. It's because what you're reflecting is truly what they are absorbing in so many ways, your energy, your behaviors, your habits. So it was so fun to take that concept and really weave it into all the different stories in the book.
And I love as well, you speak about it with your husband in the sense that he was mirroring back to you what you call your favorite self, which can be your higher self, or, we have different terms, but your favorite self, that version of you. So sometimes as well, people are reflecting back maybe what we can't see for ourselves. And I thought that was really beautiful, the way that you share that, because it gave you that opportunity to borrow his belief.
Absolutely. And we all need those people in our lives, right? Because even as you're growing and we see this with people that have so much success and they still feel imposter syndrome. And there's just times where we all need to lean on the belief of the people around us and who can support us and help us see that side of ourselves. But yeah, I share this story in the book about a moment where I was like really just having one of those dark days in the depth of postpartum, and we had lost a client, and I found myself spiraling and starting to make it mean something about me, and which is such an ongoing lesson in battle and entrepreneurship. And he just stopped me and in that moment and said to me, I wish you could see yourself the way that I see you.
Yeah.
And it just totally made me pause and think about the way that I was talking to myself and think about like, okay, what does he see, and how can I actually look at myself through that lens, because I like what he sees. I like what he reflects back to me. So yeah, that's a big part of the story that I share in terms of how we've grown together, how we've grown the business together. I feel so fortunate that because we're partners in business and in parenthood and in life, that we can constantly be that mirror for each other now, and when one of us is down, the other one's able to pick them up. And I think that partnership is so important. It's not something I take for granted in parenthood and entrepreneurship at all.
Yeah. And it's so refreshing to see partnerships in this way where it's not about the 50-50. It's about really coming together and supporting each other based on what the person needs, and being okay with like really truly leaning into that is what it's all about ultimately.
There's no way I could have brought this book to life the way that I did and the pace that I did without the way that Luke, my husband, picked up the pieces behind the scenes, and really he was such a huge part in bringing this dream to life with me too, which I think is so important. And it's that give and take in a relationship. But I told him at the beginning of this year, when I really made that decision where I'm like, this is the year that I'm publishing this book. It's happening. I'd been working on it for already almost 2 years at that point. But I was like, I'm going full speed ahead on this. And I sat him down and I said, this is going to mean some sacrifices on my part and in our partnership. And, I need you to be in this with me. And he was all for it. And so it was a growth journey together too.
I wanted to, so we've mentioned a few times the word favorite self, and I know that you're intentional with using that word. So can you tell us more about why you specifically connect with the idea of your favorite self?
Yeah, I feel like we hear a lot of different terms in terms of future self or most authentic self or highest self or best self. And none of them were resonating with me on that level. Like future self kind of, if you've read the book, Be Your Future Self Now. And it actually talks about in the book the biggest challenge about how hard it is for people to relate to their future self. And that's part of the problem. That's why it's hard for us to save for retirement and make these decisions that will pay off later. But I also found, especially in the season that I've really been the book is really based in the trenches of early motherhood, presence was so crucial to me in my healing journey. And so I didn't even have the capacity to be focused on my future self. I really needed to actually focus on my present self and my present moment. And so favorite self just felt like it wasn't the pressure of my best self, because again, when I'm running a business and, nursing my kids and doing daycare drop-offs and all the things, I'm not feeling like my best self every day, but I can still tap into my favorite self in that energy and feel aligned with that. So it just felt like it really resonated, and it was something a little bit different that we weren't constantly hearing. Like authentic self, as much as I love it, I feel like it's lost its meaning a little bit because it's become such a buzzword. So I feel like coming back to, okay, what is your favorite self? That is the self that makes you feel most alive, most aligned, which I know is such a priority and value for both of us. And really, it is about your most authentic, your whole self, bringing that to the table. And I think it's really about positioning yourself in the circumstances with the people and the relationships that make you feel that way.
No, I love it. And I think that it goes to show how important it is to connect with the word. And what's great about your favorite self is that brings it into the now. Future self disconnects you from that self. So it's more of you're here, future self is there. We're working towards that. And there can be power in that. But to bring it back into the now and using, so I loved how you used that word. Okay, now there's a few things that I wanted to from the book that really came up. So you said, owning your voice isn't just about speaking up. It's about holding steady. It's about trusting your value even when the world feels shaky. It's about setting boundaries, and not just with clients or team members, but with your own fears. I had to learn how to lead without needing constant validation. I just loved that the way in which you discerned what owning your voice is. That when we speak of owning your voice, we always think about it being using your voice. So I thought, I love that. I
Yeah.
love. So let's expand on that a little bit.
Oh, thank you. It's so cool to hear the book quoted back at me. So just sitting in that for a
Take a
minute.
moment for it.
But yeah, I think that we've always thought of the owning your voice as a very external kind of thing, and in terms of like how you're speaking and literally physically using your voice, and often in marketing as well, like as entrepreneurs, right? We hear that a lot, but it's also that internal voice. And oh my gosh, those voices can be the loudest. And that was another, that when I talk about how I feel like a lot of the stuff I wrote about was tested in new ways in this experience of bringing the book into the world, those voices, would get loud again in a lot of different moments. And I'd have to really lean back into those practices. Yeah. But yeah, you're owning your voice is in your boundaries. It really is in the way that you're showing up in ways that are more just how you're speaking. And it's ultimately kind of that identity that you are putting forward. And that links into the favorite self identity in terms of owning your voice and truly owning that favorite version of yourself and knowing that you are the only one that is responsible for putting that forward. No one else is going to do that for you. And it starts internally. That validation has to happen internally in order for you to be able to truly step into that in an authentic way.
Absolutely. And I would say that is one of the main things about being authentic is now we stop looking outside for external validation, which is really a lifetime process because we are I want to say we're wired. I have to watch how I use the word wired on this podcast, but we are naturally inclined to look outside for acceptance and love and all of those things. And so much of our spiritual journey is really coming to that realization that it's an inner work thing. So
Yes.
it's beautiful tying it in with your voice.
And that came up for me a lot once the book was written, and I remember the moment that I first shared it with early readers, and that experience like probably was my lowest point in the whole thing because there was a little bit of silence when you first share your story for the first time with people that aren't my publishing and editing team that are clearly supporting me, and I was going through that again and realizing like, okay, am I waiting for external validation? I have to trust. I know the power of my story. I know that this is, my best work that I've put forward. And I've realized too that there is a difference between seeking external validation and also just kind of feeling really in the knowing and trusting that you are having the impact that you want to have.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's such an experience with the book, where it starts so internally, and it's like I said, I wrote it for me, and then you put it out into the world, and it's like that's where so much more meaning happens when people are able to resonate. And I needed that affirmation, like, okay, this is resonating.
Yes.
It's not just for me anymore. It's so much bigger than that.
Mm-hmm. And it's more because part of that is the attachment that we have on how people are going to react to it, which we have no control over. There's no way that we can control that. So it really is about the attachment being to being in your authentic self or your favorite self and speaking your truth in that way and trusting somehow that it's going to land exactly as it needs to. But that whole process is very unsettling.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
It's one thing to say it, it's another
Yeah.
thing to experience
Yes.
it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is such a trusting experience. And yeah, getting the feedback back from these women who, mean so much to me, and hearing the way that it's resonating with them was like such a moment for me where I was just like, okay, yes, this is doing what I dreamed it would do, and it having the impact that I dreamed it would have. And this whole experience has been very spiritual for me. I've really had to get quiet with myself in so many ways, and trust on like a whole other level that I've never experienced before. So yeah, so much learning and growth in that.
Okay, so let's get into the spiritual part of it, which got me very excited as I was
Yes.
reading it. So you share a lot about signs. Signs are a big part. I did not know that about you. So that was
Yes.
a new part. So how like I know that you share some specific signs, which I love. And I love how you have a mind where you see the sign and then it's, what does that mean? And then
Yes.
that's your confirmation. So what's that been
Yeah.
like for you?
Yeah, and that kind of really started for me in a breakdown moment when I was struggling to get pregnant for the first time, and had been on quite a journey there. And then I really I didn't grow up feeling very spiritual, even in my young adult life. I actually married into a Catholic family, and I write about that in the book as well. And that was, I was not religious, and it was just like such an interesting experience for me, but I never really had that trusting in something bigger than myself. And I think I had a lot of confusion in that. And so I kind of avoided it, honestly. And then I had this moment where I was like, just really I felt like I had no other choice but to ask the universe for a sign. Because I was just like in this, rock bottom kind of moment. And I needed some kind of guidance or reassurance. And shortly after that, we were at the cottage and a blue heron flew by. And so it was like so beautiful too, the way that it flew across the sky. It was like so obvious that this is a moment. And I looked up the meaning, and it's so much about like new beginnings, new chapters, and there's a fertility tie in there as well. And at least in the definition I looked up at the time, I feel like that meaning has evolved now when I see herons as well. But it like gave me so much peace when I saw that, and I was just like, okay. And then I kept seeing them, and it just like really helped me trust the process. Yeah. And now it's come so full circle. Like literally this morning, my daughter comes running into my room and she's like, I saw a blue heron out the window. Yeah. And so it's just wild to kind of think of where I was then versus now. But yeah, in terms of the book, that was, there's a lot of different signs. And I think that goes to show too how, what we show up in our marketing never captures the full picture. And this is something that I've been wanting to tap into more and share more. And I just haven't, and not out of choice. It just isn't something I've shared as much of online. I feel like I'm sharing a little bit more about that. But with the book itself, there's the swan meeting has a big meaning to me. It's really how I came up with the title of the book. It was in the spring of this year, and I like couldn't figure out the title. I was feeling so lost with it. And we started seeing these two swans that would fly by our house, like often in the backyard when my husband and I would be sitting out after the kids went to bed, watching the sunset, just finally having a moment of peace for ourselves. And these swans would fly by. And the way that, if you ever have paid attention to swans flying, like they are just the most graceful, elegant, like it's truly majestic the way that they fly. And they kept coming back at the same time every evening, and we'd hear their trumpet sound kind of warning us, and we'd run out and be like, the swans. And it really became a thing. And I realized that they had made a home in the pond that was down the street from our house. And I was like, they're coming home. They're coming home. And it just like that, it just kept repeating in my head. And that's when it really sunk in, like, that's what this is about. It's my story of coming home to my most favorite authentic self in so many ways. And also there's a big meaning behind the meaning of home and the story there in the book. And what I kind of experienced after losing my home, and now finally feeling in this moment like I've come home.
That's so beautiful. And you said something which is, it was obvious. Because I get asked so often, like, how do I know, is this a sign or is this just
Yes.
a bird
Yeah.
that's in the sky? And that is it. When you said it was so obvious, it's this knowing that it's not just any other bird. It is there giving me or communicating with me, sharing something with me that's so powerful that you feel it's a resonance that you feel in your body,
Yes.
which is so different. You can't doubt it when it happens. Maybe after the fact, we start to like, oh, well, maybe that was just, but the moment is so beautiful and powerful.
Yes.
So I love how you shared, and there's, even the snails and
Yes.
the beavers, and there's
All so obvious,
much.
all such
I
obscure
know.
things, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't have to always be obscure either, but I do feel like there's this knowing. So I feel like it's kind of twofold. One is that you have to get quiet and still enough and be paying attention so that you do see the signs when they land, because they're there.
Yeah.
And if you're not seeing them, then you're probably not paying attention. But then also there's a piece of just like that knowing of like, ooh, that was different. That was meant for me. That means something more.
Yeah. No, I love how you've incorporated different pieces. And one of the things that you said is, it's one of my favorite lines. I didn't find my faith in a church. I found it in the stars.
Yes.
And then you share about astrology and human design, which I've gotten more into human design because of us. Like we had done some stuff together, and you kept asking me, what's your human design profile?
Yes.
I'm like, I don't know. This is what I think it is. But so that's been a big part of your journey. And so finding your faith in the stars.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
Yeah. It's funny because, again, when I think of kind of that, I've never felt spiritual, but like I always romanticized life too. Like I always loved looking at the stars and felt connected in some ways. And I always was interested in astrology, but like when I was younger, it was like reading the Cosmo magazine, reading my horoscope, which is so different from what I follow now. But I find through astrology and human design, you can learn so much about a person. And I think that's a huge part of stepping into your favorite self and really understanding yourself on a whole other level. And like talk about validating too. I find understanding my human design and my astrology, and your astrology is so much more than your sun sign, which is the typical sign that we think of, right? It's a much bigger picture than that. There's so many other intricate details, but when I learned this about myself, it felt so validating and reassuring. And then also as a tool to learn about my team, my kids, my husband, and really understanding, okay, that I need to show up for them in a different way. Just like when we think of what your love language is, like I say mine's words of affirmation, my husband's isn't. So that's maybe why like it's not that he just doesn't see this expression of my love.
You didn't clearly read that.
Right.
That's a love letter.
But remembering that and I catch myself that, I mean, so much in my leadership with my team, it's been so important to understand like how my team makes decisions, how they receive feedback. And then now in my parenting with my kids, and there's part of like with human design with kids, there's a kind of a certain point where they really step into it too. So at the beginning, it might not be as obvious. But knowing that and knowing their astrology and kind of like the typical direction just helps me understand them that much more and be able to adapt my parenting style to their own authentic needs and desires too.
Yeah, it's a great tool to use. And I know you and I share the same human design in the sense, both manifesting generators, sacral authority.
Yes.
And that is, again, just validating because there's times where, so sacral authority means you make your decisions based on your gut, which I've always done. But at times I used to feel oh, maybe I should have thought this through a little bit more. Is it crazy for me to sign up for this or to do that without doing more research? We bought a vacation property and it was just in the moment where I just felt this gut feeling of, I think it's time, like, let's not wait, let's do it now, but trusting those gut feelings. And that, in some ways gives you permission to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like now that we understand that, we can look back and we can see the receipts, right? We can see how those decisions played out. The best decisions I've made in my life have been from my gut. I got married young, I consider, at 25. I didn't set out to do that. My parents divorced when I was going into grade 9, so I felt actually like I was a little bit cynical already about marriage and love, and it was very much an intuitive decision to do that and to start my business and also to put my book out into the world. It was really leading with that, and it took time for me to nurture that and trust it. I feel like we're conditioned to be much more strategic, like in business. Everything leads with strategy, and we like to think that we need the best strategy to succeed, and that applies to so many other areas of your life as well. Like you always lean on the logic, and I was like a pro cons list girl for so long, until I just realized my superpower is actually that instant heck yes feeling that I tap into and following that.
Yeah. I know that's where we get in trouble, is when we don't listen to it or we try to make sense of it. And that's always the hardest thing, because the mind wants to make sense of things.
Yes.
And it needs the data, the proof to make sure that it's the right decision. So leaning into that, I find, has been a practice.
Yeah. And then just knowing other people don't necessarily make decisions the same way. Like if you're married to an emotional authority, they're not going to know right away. They need a night to sleep on it, and giving them that space, let alone a reflector, who I'm fascinated by. If you have any reflectors in your life, I think it's so cool. And they actually technically are most aligned having a full moon cycle, which is wild. I'm like, how could, as a Manny Jen, I'm like, how could you possibly wait?
Oh, yeah, no, it's so true. And even from your other job in marketing, it's so empowering when you know that people do make decisions based on different, because I remember there was someone that I knew that I had signed up for, it was a good investment program, or the program was a big investment. And I'm like, I just have to let you know that I actually didn't even go on your website. Like, I just made my decision based on what I saw, the energy I felt, and that was the way in which I decided. But that was me. Yes. Then there's people who will go through the website. Yes. They want to really look, they need to know all of the details and stuff. So when you can capture everything, it just helps you to connect with people in that way.
Exactly. And that's where like the copywriting marketing
I know,
comes in.
That's where you're so good.
The sales psychology of it, and knowing the different identities of buyers, and really giving them space to like make the decision on their own, I think is so empowering and important too.
Absolutely. Okay, can we talk a little bit about your relationship with abundance? Because you do talk about money, so we can maybe get into money, but also manifesting, because I know you're a big manifester, and what your relationship has been with abundance and money and manifesting, and all of the good stuff.
Yeah, that I feel like that's also been such a journey in itself, where in business especially, we kind of set out and we hear this noise about really what success looks and feels like, and typically it's tied to a monetary amount. And there's we went through a season that it was very much like you're building the 6-figure, the 7-figure business, and everything it was a lot of pressure to identify with defining success that way. And one thing that I've really learned in my own practice is how much abundance is so beyond wealth in terms of like financial wealth. And when I feel the most abundant, it really is in those moments where I am able to be like fully present with my kids, and when I'm in nature and I can pay attention and see how the trees grow abundantly without anyone telling them how to grow or how to be. I really stepped into this understanding and knowing that abundance is all around us, and it's so much more than kind of that typical definition. And in terms of a manifestation perspective, I just really believe that money and abundance can flow from anywhere. You know, we're kind of conditioned to think it's like you get the job with the steady paycheck and the salary and the benefits, and that's where you find safety. But it's okay, actually, if you can train yourself to feel safety in so many other ways, there's so many, you can attract and be a magnet to abundance in ways that you didn't even think about and consider. And that's when you know you're in alignment, you know, when it's arriving, when you weren't expecting it or in a different way. Yeah. And you're paying attention and realizing and noticing.
I love how you say too, like when it comes to abundance, it's not, because so often we're just putting ourselves into this whole money area. And when you expand abundance, money just being that energy, that frequency. So when you're abundant in one area, there's no reason why you can't be abundant in other areas.
Yeah.
So opening it up is so freeing.
Yes.
Instead of just like focusing on that one piece.
Yeah, exactly. And pulling that into like a part of your identity and making it mean something about yourself. And I think, you know, there's so much to learn about money and the energy of money that I'm now really trying to be more intentional and having those early conversations. I catch myself now with my kids where, you know, I don't want to say something. I really want to be mindful of the way that I'm talking about money in front of them, because I think generationally that's a newer kind of perspective that I don't think that my parents had the tools or the resources to see it that way. So money wasn't something that we talked about. It was at the dinner table. It was more taboo. And, you know, so also knowing kind of what lessons you learned about money early on in your life and how that imprinted in you, and having to work through those again and really make yourself feel safe talking about money and receiving money in different ways. And yeah.
Your kids are two very lucky beings to have you as a mom and to have you be that role model for them. And when I said that it was a love letter to your husband, it's also a love letter to your two kids.
That's the ultimate compliment that you could possibly give me. That makes me so emotional. And I've held on to that. That's probably been the biggest thing to really help me through this in those moments where I'm like, okay, maybe I will just tuck this one into the drawer and maybe I'll go back to hiding. I've remembered how incredible it is that I get to gift this book to my kids and that they get to read this story of this season in our lives. I've always been someone that I feel like I struggle with my memory. So you know, that's why I love photography and taking videos. And like, I always feel like I have to capture it all, but being able to write and like journal too, but being able to write in this way and something that when I got the proof copy, the first round, they were the first people that I handed them books. The dedication is literally to them. I'm like, this is for you. And, you know, my 4-year-old son is like, oh, but my daughter, like seeing her face when she got it, she's like, this is mine. And like goes and puts it on her bookshelf immediately. And my mom came to visit and she like immediately went and showed her the book. And so it's been so inspiring to have them to be able to kind of to focus on and knowing that they get to hold this story and read this story one day.
I love that, like just the way that you speak about motherhood. And it's one of those books that I wish I would have had when my kids were little, right? To just give me permission to really truly live my favorite life. And in doing that, you know, they get to see you living in that way. And, you know, when you think of just the cost of maybe there were a few evenings where you were working and you were writing and your husband was looking after them. But wow, for them to see this and to also see how that the commitment that you had to sharing your story. And yes, it's for them, it's for your whole family, it's for yourself, but in the process, how many people that you're going to be helping with that.
I love that you bring that up, because that's something also that I kind of had to deal with too, realizing that this dream of mine was taking me away from my kids still, for sure. And I think that's the reminder of like, it's never this perfect balance or equilibrium. It is that kind of that dance, and knowing that, okay, but this is, this is time that I'm focusing on this dream, and remembering all the benefits that it's going to give them moving forward as well. So it's, yes, taking away from some presence, but then what it's able to create for them, and be a resource hopefully for them in some capacity as well, makes it so worth it. And just knowing that that's like some short-term sacrifice, and
that you get to, equilibrium is the word that I love instead of balance, because then things, will always shift. And so that's been a season, you had the season where it was writing your book, and now maybe you get more time to soak up the smaller moments with them. But it always, when your intention is right and you're coming from a place of alignment, that really, and it's not the time that we spend with our kids as much as the energy that we bring to them. And so, I mean, I know so many people who think the right thing to do is being a mom. And I know that I grew up in a generation, in a time where it was like what was considered to be the good mothering was sacrificing. And in doing that, are you bringing your best or your favorite self, your most aligned energy, when you feel like you're sacrificing parts of yourself? So now you're not even bringing your whole self to parenting, because there's parts of you that you're not allowing yourself to, that are not emerging, that are not there, that you don't get to show your kids. So I know personally that that's been a big, a bringing of everything together is just so powerful for kids and for the parent, for everyone.
Absolutely. And I think when I have an online business, it's hard to like take my kids to work. My take your kid to work day is like in my home office at my desk. And so I've also been intentional about kind of explaining to them, like when I'm writing it and when I'm working on it, even if it doesn't quite resonate, I really just feel passionate about not just giving them a front row seat, but truly a backstage pass. And so now, as we're releasing this episode into the world, my kids get to come to the launch party. I'm so excited to have them there. So, yes, okay, maybe it took me away from some nights where I was like working late, and I still rarely missed a bedtime. That was always a priority for me, but maybe missed some pickups and other things that are important to me. But now on the other side, I get to bring them to these spaces. And my daughter and I, I've talked about like taking her along with me on this kind of book tour. And I have a children's book in the works as well that she's very passionate about and involved in with me. So it all comes full circle.
Full body. That's happening. I can feel that for you. That's
putting
exciting.
It out there. First to announce it on the Spiritually Wired podcast.
There you go. We heard it. You heard it first here. Okay, we could keep going.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you this question, because there is a very powerful question that you ask in the book that I'm going to ask you.
Uh-oh.
Have you taken the time to ask yourself lately, what do I actually want to be known for? What legacy do I want to leave? Who am I here to serve, and why does it matter so deeply to me?
Yeah.
I felt like it was just the perfect full circle moment.
I love that. I love that reflection back. And yes, there's journal prompts after every chapter, which was really important for me to.
Reading experience is beautiful.
I wanted it to feel like a journey, that you're coming along, and I'm going first here and sharing my story, because I think that's so important. When I talk about how powerful stories are, I'm going to go first and lead with my own truth and vulnerability. And so to answer that question, I really do think that it is standing in my truth and my favorite self, and showing up in that way, and making decisions from that place, and trusting in myself and in the universe that is going to lead me to fulfill my purpose in this world. And there's nothing more fulfilling, I think, than feeling aligned in your purpose. I think that's what we're all here to do. And unfortunately, we tend to get so distracted taking other paths because we feel this pressure or conditioning, like patterns that have imprinted in us in terms of where we should go and what we should do. So when you are able to live in your truth and be that mirror for everyone else around you, that's the legacy that I want to leave.
Beautiful. Well, I have so much respect and admiration for you. I'm so grateful that you're in my circle. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you and this book. So if you are listening, you're watching, you want to definitely download or buy the copy of Coming Home, The Path to Your Favorite Self and Permission to Do It Your Way. Where can people buy your book?
So you can go to carlyottaway.com and easily buy the book from there. You can also download the first chapter. It's actually the prologue, the introduction, and chapter 1.
Okay.
You can download it, get a taste for it. I want you to fall in love with it right off the bat. So you can either go and purchase it right away or download it and get a feel for it by visiting my website.
Amazing. I know I've been binge reading it.
Oh, I love that.
I started it. I was sending you a message yesterday because I couldn't put it down. So I am celebrating you in all the ways. And thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. This is, like I said, such a full circle moment. Like you've been there from the beginning or very early stages of this journey. And I can't wait to return the favor when you publish your book and I'm having you on my podcast when that day comes. I can't wait, but I'm so grateful to be here. Honestly, like this is just such I feel like I'm on cloud 9 in this moment, getting to have this conversation with you. And so thank you so much.
I love it. You speak in the book about expanders, right? And you are definitely an expander. So I'm very grateful. I want to thank you for watching, for listening to us, and just reminding you, as always, that you are spiritually wired for love, for success, abundance, connection, and definitely for coming home to your favorite self. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Spiritually Wired. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review. It really makes a big difference for the podcast. And if you're ready to dive deeper and join a soul-led community, come be a part of the Spiritually Wired membership. With weekly live lessons and a rich library of recorded classes, it's designed to support you every step of the way on your spiritual journey. We currently have a special offer where you can receive your first month for half the price. You can find a link in the show notes or come check it out at reneewalkerwellness.com. Until next time, remember to take some deep breaths. Remember that you are spiritually wired.